she's an asset. You're an idiot.
Yes.
You're an idiot. And people are tired of your bullshit.
Okay, let him respond. Vinny,
Change the record.
Let him respond, Vinny.
Do me a favor,
Change the
my friend.
record, bro.
Instead of attacking me, attack what I said about Tulsi Gabbard. For a decade,
she's a Russian asset.
She has done nothing but stare at Putin. Address that. Address that.
But but Joe, I'll address that. Okay, I'm going to come to. Hang on.
What's up, everyone? In this fiery segment on Piers Morgan Uncensored, Joe Walsh and Vincent clash over the controversial topic of Tulsi Gabbard and whether she can be trusted in U.S. intelligence. Walsh labels her as a Putin asset relying on baseless Cold War-style rhetoric, while Vincent defends her as a patriot who questions the reckless foreign policy of the establishment. Piers Morgan, caught in the crossfire, attempts to moderate as the conversation veers into everything from the Iraq War to the military-industrial complex. This debate is far more than just about Tulsi, it's about exposing political hypocrisy, lazy fear-mongering, and the refusal to acknowledge legitimate critiques of U.S. policy. Let's break this down and call out the nonsense, hypocrisy, and emotional manipulation as it happens. Let's get into it.
We're joined the panel now as the host of The Social Contract, former Republican presidential candidate and Congressman Joe Walsh, who says that Gabbard is a Putin cheerleader. Well, Joe, welcome back to Uncensored. Do you think she's a total disaster? Why?
You can't trust her. This country cannot trust her with our intelligence. If I'm one of our allies, there's no way if she's appointed, I'm sharing my intelligence with America. Look, I've said before, she's at best a Putin cheerleader. At worst, she's a Putin asset. For the past decade, she has done nothing but defend Vladimir Putin and parrot Putin and Russian propaganda. I mean, again, there's a list. I could take 30 minutes and go through the list. That's a humongous concern. She's not on our side. She's clearly on Russia's side.
She literally fought for America. She served her country and fought for America. How can you say she's not on our side?
She's still in the military. She's still in the military. Joe, first of all, this is the guy that says he's not you're not a Democrat. I remember this guy who was on the PPD podcast. You are exactly the problem that, listen to me, I want you to keep talking the way that you're talking because of people like you. It's gonna, hey, excuse me. You know what? Let me finish. Because of people like you, and your rhetoric, you know what's going to happen? J.D. Vance is going to be the president next. Tulsi Gabbard's going to be the president. Eric Trump's going to be the president. We are going to keep having Republican presidents because of people like you still talking Russia shit, Joe. Get over it. It's over. You're talking about an active military girl. She's a lieutenant colonel in the army, and you're saying she's an asset. You're an idiot. Yes. You're an idiot. And people are tired of your bullshit.
Okay, let him respond. Vinny,
change the record.
Let him respond, Vinny.
Do me a favor,
change the record, bro.
Instead of attacking me, attack what I said about Tulsi Gabbard. For a decade,
she's a Russian asset.
Done nothing but stare at Putin. Address that. Address that.
But
Pretty exciting debate. Joe Walsh leads with the same tired accusation that's been recycled since 2016. If you question U.S. foreign policy, you must be in Russia's pocket. This is a classic fear-mongering and a deliberate attempt to shut down debate. Instead of addressing Tulsi's actual arguments or track record, Joe chooses to smear her. Calling a veteran and a public servant a foreign agent is not only reckless, it's a slap in the face to anyone with basic critical thinking skills. It's the same playbook they used to attack Trump and countless others, and it's just as hollow now as it was then.
But Joe, I'll address that. Okay, I'm going to come to... Hang on. I'm going to come to Gillian in a second. All I would say, Joe, is I get an email each week from Ian Bremner, one of the guys I most respect in the political world. He's very balanced, gives very insightful weekly emails about what's going on in the news. He said he's seen absolutely no evidence that she has ever been anything even approaching a Russian asset. It's a total myth of the Democrat side to suggest she ever has been.
Pierce, you're going to ignore 10 years of what she said?
Well, she's allowed to have she's allowed to have an opinion.
Well, of course she is.
Well, hang on, she's allowed to have an opinion about Ukraine. She can have an opinion about Ukraine.
No, of course she is.
You may not agree with that opinion. And by the way, I don't agree with her opinion about Ukraine, but she's allowed to have it. It doesn't make her a Russian asset.
No, Pierce, exactly. She's allowed to have her opinion. Donald Trump has picked her to head up all our intelligence efforts in this country.
Yeah, but there is no evidence that she would be a threat to leaking that intelligence to Russia. It's a myth.
Not at all.
All right, let me go to Gillian.
This is a pretty heated debate. Be sure to leave down in the comments below your opinion or thoughts. This is a place for discussion. Also, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Let's get back into it.
Because everything she's done the past 10 years and said has been exactly what Russia would want her to say or do. So she's either an asset or a dupe.
That's the dumbest standard ever. Who cares? If I said Saddam Hussein doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, that might be exactly what Saddam Hussein wants me to say. That doesn't mean anything. You see, Piers, this is the trick here. And I'm sorry, I know you want to go to Julian, but the trick is that the same way they used to say Trump-Russia collusion, they wouldn't say Donald Trump's in a conspiracy with the Russians. You see, because that's actually meets the criminal code. And then so you just say collusion because what does that even mean? They could have had a phone call. Okay, they're colluding, but that's totally legal. So when you say she's a Russian asset, you give this wink and a nod like she's a traitor, when what it means, and Piers, you disagree with me on this topic too, but listen, the argument is that there were 1 million off-ramps to the war in Ukraine, and that the West chose to not take any of them, and that this war could have been avoided, and it could have been negotiated away. Now, the idea that if someone makes this argument, your counter to that is to say that you're a Putin asset. This is so, first off, it's just despicable and it's profoundly stupid.
Vincent delivers a brutal takedown of Joe's argument here. The idea that someone criticizing US foreign policy is automatically pro-Putin, it's not just a bad faith argument, it's intellectually bankrupt. For years, the political establishment has relied on this kind of lazy rhetoric to dismiss anyone who doesn't toe the party line. What Joe is really doing here is refusing to engage with Tulsi's actual positions, resorting instead to cheap smears. This is how you avoid accountability, by attacking the messenger instead of the message.
It makes absolutely no sense at all. So listen, at least during the original McCarthyism period, at least during the House Committee on American Activities, at least back then, there were some communists. Nobody is loyal to Vladimir Putin. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
You're entitled. No, Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is entitled to her opinion as a citizen of this country. But if for 10 years your opinion is identical to Russian propaganda, we are entitled to question that. And someone like
you're saying nothing, and I'm entitled to make the point that that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life.
You both made your points. Let me bring it. Okay. Time out. Let's bring in Gillian. Been waiting very patiently to get back in here. I mean, Gillian, my experience of Tulsi Gabbard, I interviewed Tulsi a couple of months ago. I thought she was extraordinarily impressive, I have to say. And I think this idea that you categorize her because she happens to think that the history of the Ukraine-Russia war, that she actually has a view, which many on the Republican side do, by the way, that actually it could have been avoided. I don't believe that, but I certainly understand that view, and it's been expressed to me by professors and everybody else. I don't certainly look upon her as some kind of traitor for having that view. What do you think?
Okay, first of all, I believe that for half of those 10 years, wasn't she a celebrated Democrat, or am I forgetting or missing something? That said, let's look at what she's actually said. So this is a combat veteran that was deployed to Iraq, which was an absolute pointless war by neocons like Dick Cheney, who...
They shift gears here, exposing the hypocrisy of those attacking Tulsi. The same people calling her untrustworthy were the same ones who lied us into Iraq, destabilized entire regions, and made billions off the destruction. Tulsi's anti-war stance isn't born out of ignorance. It's rooted in first-hand experience with the horrors of war. Joe Walsh and his dilemma don't want to have that conversation because it forces them to confront their own complicity in endless, pointless wars.
I personally think he's a war criminal, but we could table that argument for another day. This is a woman that I imagine has seen people die in horrible ways, has seen mothers lose sons, wives lose husbands. She's for peace. Now, when you are engaging in a proxy war with a nuclear power, I would imagine that we should do everything possible to ensure that that does not happen. And in addition, she's also raising the alarm bell about biochemical weapons in Ukraine, these labs, which is exactly how we got COVID, is gain-of-function research. And she has said specifically that we need diplomacy, that if you look at Reagan, he spoke with Gorbachev. If you look at Kennedy, he spoke with Khrushchev to avoid disaster. That's what she has advocated for. That's why she sat with Assad and all of the people, forgive me, the people that opposed him. She sat with everybody when she went to Syria. Didn't Nancy Pelosi also sit with Assad, unless I'm crazy? And not only that, if we look at, I'm with Dave.
Well,
I have done a lot of homework on this one.
Civilians, well before.
Okay, so here's my question. So you wouldn't sit down with these kinds of people and you would just let people die when, ironically, it's the military-industrial complex that's making, oh my God, isn't it almost $1 trillion off of these wars? I mean, who's profiting off of this? There were numerous off-ramps here. So what are you going to do? You want to punch Putin in the nose because he's a bully?
This wasn't a debate, it was a beatdown. Vincent completely dismantled Joe's argument, exposing them for what they are: baseless smears designed to deflect from real issues. Tulsi Gabbard may not fit neatly into the establishment's narrative, but that's exactly why she's a threat to their agenda. This conversation goes beyond Tulsi or Kamala. It's about how the politic class manipulate public perception to maintain their grip on power. The question viewers need to ask themselves is simple: who benefits from the lies and who's really fighting for the truth? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts or opinions down in the comments below if you agree or disagree with a lot of the points made here. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, it really helps out the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next one.